Hi, I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage. We're having our monthly tech meet, and today we're going to be talking about the Silver Shadow series, the differences between the Silver Cloud and Silver Shadow, and a lot of the features, hydraulics, and all that kind of stuff. This over here is your brake reservoir. It's big, right? Most car brake reservoirs are very small. This is designed to be, let's see, look on the side there. If you see, it's got little windows, and you can see there's fluid levels in there. You can see the instructions says right there, brake fluid reservoir, top up to this level, minimum level, with car unladen after running for 4 minutes. So if somebody's in the car, it's going to be pushing up back there, so it's going to have extra fluid back there, so it's going to bring it down here a little bit. Okay? When they sit over time and they depressurize, which is normal, the fluid levels will go up. So you never really want to go much over that line. And remember, when you look down, you're at a different angle. So sometimes it looks like it's, but you don't want them too full, because what happens is when that system depressurizes, all that fluid's got to go back someplace. So it comes here to the reservoir, and sometimes you'll see cars with it wet up here, and that's because there's too much fluid in it. It's a big system. This front system is about that big of the part of the reservoir. It's not much. Now all that does is run brakes on the number one system, which is the front calipers and the upper half of the rear calipers. The rear system, which is much bigger, it runs that hydraulic system too. So it needs more reserve.
So many accumulators.
Many accumulators, yes, that's funny. And when I started working on these cars in 1979, I would do 3 or 4 accumulators a week. It's a maintenance item. They're usually last 2 to 3 years, depends on how you drive them. The proper maintenance schedule dictates every 2 years you got to open that thing up, clean all that stuff out, and flush out the system and put new fluid in it. And the reason for that is this is normal they say .3 or 363, which went by the wayside and came back. I use .4, special type, Castrol. It's hygroscopic. And what that means is it's designed to absorb moisture. And that's to prevent your brakes from fading. If it didn't absorb moisture and there were water bubbles in your brake fluid, when it gets hot, it turns to steam and you lose your brakes.
Right.
Okay, that's because a gas will compress, a fluid will not. So that's why. I have seen cars come in that have been sitting for years and not maintained very well, and you open that up and it looks like a bunch of brown sugar in there. It is crystallized and it just plugs up all the systems. Inside here are some very fine screens which feed the pumps. Now's a good time to look at the pumps. Let's see, we can see the back pump from the other side much easier. Sort of.
Yeah.
The pump is down here. It's really hard to see. I'll just put my pointer on there. There's a pump there. It's a cylinder. Maybe you can see it from over there, huh, Steve? Can you see it? My pointer is straight down. There's one there. That's the number 2 pump. Number 1 pump is up here, right down there. So they, like I said, they run off the camshaft. There's 2 extra lobes on the camshaft. So it's always going up and down. It's a mechanical pump. In the reservoir are some very fine screens, and they're made out of stainless steel, super, super fine to keep any debris from going into the system, because any debris in the system will affect the valving. It's very sensitive. So I've seen taken these reservoirs apart where it's just nasty black and brown sugary, and then you get down to those screens and they're collapsed because of the suction. They get plugged and it just sucks them down, or they're torn. I've seen a lot of that. Really crazy braking system when you think about it. You don't have brakes when your car's not running, and we've had at least a half a dozen tow trucks in 40 years where the driver, they're on commission, most of them, so they're always in a hurry. They just set their ramp on, connect everything, jump in, take it out of gear, and run into something because they don't have brakes. Just happened a few weeks ago. We've got a hole in the wall over here on this building. If you walk around the outside, there's a crack where it's been repaired. So one ran into there, and there's a broken fence over there, and so After this last event, since I have all these employees and I'm trying to be a better boss, we address that on our weekly team meeting so that anybody who sees a tow truck out there all by himself must drop what they're doing and make sure that they do not run a car into anything. So that's something to remember too at home.
Right.
Right. So now you're probably nervous as hell, right?
Actually, yes.
This wasn't a good idea bringing her thing.
When you look at what was out the year before this model came out, two different animals completely. Two different animals. I'm not sure if it's better. This system, in a different form, was on these cars until the late, I think 99 was the last one that had this type of, and they went to a different type of brake fluid. It's a mineral oil, so that's on the Spirit Spurs, Turbo R's, Azures up to 99. And they used a different fluid which is mineral oil based. The one thing about that brake fluid, being hygroscopic, and it's by design, it's a great paint remover. It is. And I have actually, you see that windshield reservoir right over there, that white plastic thing right next to the brake reservoir? I've had people put brake fluid in that, thinking, because it looks like a brake master cylinder filler, right? Put that in there, and I go on a test drive during a service and check those windshield washers, because that's part of the deal. And this stuff would come out, and I got back to the shop. This happened once, and the paint had already started to change. How do you deal with that, right? I didn't put that stuff in there, but I was just doing my job. So don't confuse them. Anyways, the mineral oil, back to that. Similar system, same type of pumps. The accumulators are not rebuildable on those, the spheres. They are little green gas bombs. If Daniel wants, he can go grab one. You guys can hold one. Yeah. It's a CD 6000. He knows that already. 3 months he's been with me. So they went to this other, it's a mineral oil, so it doesn't affect paint. Unless you got really old paint, it might soak in and make it look better. It's not as volatile, but it's nasty. It's real slimy, and it's green, so you can distinguish.
So should you check the brake fluid level on a regular basis after it's run, right?
Oh yeah.
Just eyeball it?
Yeah.
Just eyeball it?
From 75 on, they put sensors in the reservoir. So if the sensors are working, there's little floats in there that'll let you know if you're getting low. All the mineral oil cars have those warning light sensors to let you know what your level is. Here we go. There's a bomb. This is a brake sphere. This is, as you can see, there's nothing I can take apart on. These are all welded. So inside is like a balloon, essentially, that's attached on this end. And on this end, they charge it with gas, nitrogen gas, non-reactive. And so this screws onto the valve body, and then the pumps and the accumulator valve bodies, just what it does is the gas, when there's no fluid pressure on it, occupies this whole cavity. So it's like a balloon in there. And if you ever take a balloon and you squeeze it, you can feel that it gives. So the hydraulic fluid pumps in on this side and compresses that almost all the way to the end. So that when you hit the brakes, it pushes it, right? Until it hits that certain pressure, and it starts to build it up again. These are throwaways. These are great, I think. It's much better than rebuilding those things and charging.
Can you service the nitrogen pressure?
These are non-serviceable. Throwaway.
You can't put more nitrogen in there.
Well, typically what happens is it doesn't just lose a gas. What happens is the diaphragm bursts. Okay, so the gas goes into the system. All of a sudden your brakes will start feeling funny because there's a bunch of air in it. And that's usually... Now, they were really clever on this because on the later cars, not the Shadows, they still have that leveling system. But rather than have it fully hydraulic to lift the car, they incorporate one of these on top of each rear strut. So instead of a normal tube type shock that you put in, it's got its own hydraulic and its own gas pressure, they put this in the system. So what gives you your soft ride is that balloon feel. And when these lose a diaphragm, it's hard as a rock. So every little bump on the road makes the car jump in the back. So that's a serviceable item also. They call them gas springs.
Is that plastic? The outside?
Yeah, and if you watch the old World War II movies, they used to have a handle on it, and they were the German hand grenades, right? That's why we call them bombs.
Looks exactly like the bombs in cartoons where they are.
Oh yeah, TNT and all that kind of stuff.